Quads, calves, hamstring, and adductors. These are my favorite tips after years of trial and error and solution to address the most common problems when it comes to growing big legs. So first, quads. This is a tip for pressing movements. This might be the most important tip for your quads. A full range of motion is your absolute priority. Work on your ankle mobility, wear heel elevated shoes, change your foot position, or adjust the platform angle if you can, or a mix between all of that. I don't care, do what it takes to have a full range of motion. The number one priority when it comes to choosing a squat variation is to find a variation where you can have a full range of motion without hurting yourself. But why? First, because obviously it's always nice to work your muscle through the whole range of motion, to be accustomed to the stretch position. But the most important thing is that the deeper you go, the sharper the angle between your thigh and your shin, the bigger the torque and the more force you have to generate with your quads. And the harder the movement is for your quads, the more likely it is that they become the limiting factor, which is what you want. When you maximize knee flexion and you go deep into a squat, it's not that your glutes stop working, it's that your quads work more. You see, when you have bad mobility or poor foot placement, it's easy to have a full range of motion at the hip level, meaning your glutes work through the whole range of motion. But when you zoom in on the knee, on your quads, you only work through the first half. So after a set, you might say, oh, I reach failure, which is true, you reach failure, but your glutes give up first. And you want to do everything you can so that your quads give up first. So this is excellent news. You might think that you have bad quads genetics, but maybe you just have bad predisposition that make it harder for you to go deep into a squat, and thus that prevents you from growing big quads. But once you find the solution to reach that full range of motion, you will give your quads the chance to reach failure, which is exactly what you want if you want to maximize size. Tip number 2 for pressing movements: do low reps. If I had to do low reps, so let's say between 4 and 8 reps, for only one muscle group, it would be for quads. Why? Because by nature, pressing movement are very taxing on your cardiovascular system. And we want the tension to be the only limiting factor, not your cardiovascular system. So the best way to make the set less demanding on your cardiovascular system is to lower the reps. Plus, when you do those squat patterns, if you want to optimize performance, you have to brace, you have to breathe in a very specific way. You basically inhale at the lockout position, hold your breath as you go down, and exhale once you push the way up. And this breathing pattern does not match the way you breathe when you do cardio, for example, when you want to optimally give oxygen to your muscles. You cannot breathe for optimal bracing and strength output and breathe to sustain your cardiovascular efforts at the same time. So obviously choose to maximize the tension on your muscles and just give up on cardio during those sets. And tip number 3, be open to lower your weekly volume. Among all my muscle groups, quads are the muscle group where I do the lowest volume. Why? Because we evolved to be very comfortable in the lockout position, just in order to stand up and to carry things. So it's very tempting and very easy between each rep of, let's say, a leg press to rest at the top position. And this is basically a built-in cluster set, which makes each set more intense. And you probably want to counterbalance these extra intensity with lower volume. So me, for example, I'm not asking you to blindly follow me, but there were times where I did one set twice a week. So 2 total sets of quads per week, and I made huge progress. So be open and maybe just try to do less total volume for your quads than you do for maybe your other muscles. Next, leg extensions. They are perfect, they are stable, they allow you to work your rectus femoris, because during squat patterns your rectus femoris does not work perfectly because it crosses the hip joint. So when you go down, your rectus femoris gets longer at the knee but shorter at the hip, which makes it not work optimally. So if I had one tip for leg extension, is that you might get strong really fast. And once you get strong, you will see that your butt wants to come off the seat. So don't be afraid to use straps or even seat belts. I never did that, but some people do. But to me, my favorite solution is the single leg extension, because you can roughly divide the weight by 2, have basically the same tension on your quads, but the overall force exerted on your body is divided by roughly 2. So you will have the same tension on your quads, but your butt probably won't come off the seat because you would have to be exceptionally strong. I like to alternate each workout between regular leg extension and single leg extension. Okay, calves. Why calves and not hamstring? Because calves can help you have bigger quads. I know it's a bold claim, but I will back it up. So calves respond exceptionally well when you work them in the stretch position. And to fully stretch your calves, you have to, of course, raise your ankle, but you also have to extend the knee to straighten your leg, because a big part of your calf crosses the knee joint. So find a hack squat or a pendulum squat or whatever leg press, straighten your legs and go as deep as you can without, of course, hurting yourself. And when you do that, you of course build big calves, but you also slightly work on your ankle mobility, which is going to help you to get into that deep squat position, which we talked about earlier. But if you truly want to maximize your ankle mobility, you should also work on your ankle mobility when your knee is bent, because that mimics the squat pattern. But there are many excellent drills online that you can find to maximize your ankle mobility. And quick tip for your calf raises: since a big part of your calf crosses the knee joint, you don't want to stretch your calves at the ankle level and to contract them at the same time by bending your knee, because the overall length of the head of the calf that crosses the knee joint stays the same, and this is counterproductive. So maybe just have a slight bend so you don't put all the pressure on your tendons, and just lock it and do your calf raises. And I had excellent growth for my calves when I did 2 sets twice a week of 5 to 8 reps. I would not advise you to treat calves as a way different muscle. Just train them with intensity as you would train every other muscle, and you will see big results. Okay, hamstrings next. 2 main functions: bending your knee and extending the hip. So first, knee flexions and leg curls. My number one tip is do not obsess over doing seated leg curls to have the most optimal stretch. You can do them, of course, but the number one parameter to find the best leg curl variation is to only do the variation that do not hurt you. In my experience, and after talking to a lot of people, leg curls are perhaps the single exercise that causes the most pain or injuries. Me, for example, I can only do lying leg curls with all the tension at the stretch position. And this is perfect because I would argue that I get 99% of my leg curl gains just from this variation. Seated leg curls hurt me, so it's not even a question. I'm not even considering doing them. My favorite variation are, of course, the regular leg curl, the single leg curl, but I think my favorite one is the alternating single leg curl, the same way you would do alternating dumbbell curls. They feel amazing. You can put all your resources into one leg at a time, and you don't have to do twice the number of sets. Just make sure that the leg that is resting does not touch the pad on the way down, because it's going to ease the tension and make it harder to properly track progress. And for hip extensions, mainly straight leg deadlifts, my number one tip is don't be peer pressured into touching the ground with your barbell or your dumbbells. Just take the weight up, bend over, keep your legs as straight as possible, maybe a slight bend for balance and to not overload your tendons. Go down until you feel a big stretch, then come back up. Usually when we want to go deeper to touch the ground, for example, we do that by using muscles that are not the target muscle, which brings me to my next point. When you bend over, do not bend your knee. You don't want to stretch your hamstring at the hip level and to shorten them at the same time at the knee level. So excessively bending your knee, and usually we do that to go deeper, can be counterproductive. And of course, all of that is a spectrum. You are not going to completely deactivate your hamstring when to do a 1 degree bend, but just do a range of motion where you can feel a big stretch on your hamstrings. And finally, adductors. First advice, do not skip them. I know they might be working during your squat patterns, during maybe your deadlifts, depending on your stance. But isolating them is always optimal because you truly isolate the hip adduction, which is very hard to find in other movements. On the hip adduction machine, you have the forces pointing in the exact right direction to maximally challenge your adductors. And adductors can really make your legs look way bigger. I have experimented with wide stance presses. The next day I had big adductors, soreness. I think they're good, but I wouldn't say they're optimal. Just hop on the hip adduction machine, go slowly into the stretch position because it's easy to injure yourself. Don't be afraid to go heavy and do low reps. And the soreness is going to be absolutely insane the first time you do them. But once you go past this initial phase, it's just going to be a smooth sailing. And quick bonus tip, but I love to do between each of my adductor sets a hip adduction movement, so opening my legs, because this is also a movement that we almost never do in other exercise. We never open our legs with forces pointing in the exact opposite direction. So just sneak it in and just don't think about it. It's perfect for the upper glutes and it makes it more unlikely that you develop some imbalances. And that's basically it. Of course, progressive overload is king. Not injuring yourself and longevity is also absolutely king. If you have the choice, find the most stable movements. If you want to work on your balance too, I would recommend you to work on your balance separately and to use stable movements to put the most tension possible. Just try to avoid exercises where you just have a lukewarm uniform mix between balance and strength. Like for every muscle, but especially for quads, I like to do between 5 and 8 reps. I do between 1 to 4 sets twice a week, and I work my legs twice a week, so between 2 to 8 sets a week. But I would say that most of the time I am between 4 to 6 sets for each of these muscles. Feel free to ask your questions down below. Maybe I forgot something or I wasn't clear enough. Yeah, thanks for watching. See ya.